Welcome to United Palace. I'm Reverend Dr. Jose Miguel Roman, your host for this evening. You're all here to be part of something really special, the Open Heart Conversations, where we come together as community once a month, the last Sunday of every month at 3 p.m. here at United Palace, and we explore the world's great wisdom traditions. We come together and with an open heart and an open mind, we take some time to explore the wisdom of the great faiths, the great spiritualities, the great religions of the world. These are the paths that have often informed humanity's understanding of itself and its place in the world. Today, we have a particularly special day, as we will be exploring Buddhism. So are you excited by this, Reverend Arda?
I am. My name is Reverend Arda Itez. By the way, I'm the Spiritual Arts Program Designer here, as well as Reverend Jose's co-host. I am extremely excited about this, particularly because when I first started seminary, Buddhism was one of the first things that we had studied. And I was so sure, this is for me. I'll be a Buddhist by the time I'm done, with this. And there were so many things that I didn't know. And I said, I don't know if I'm really capable of being a Buddhist. I'm a type A personality. Buddhism is really about letting go. And I said, I don't know if I can handle that. So I've got a lot of questions for you today.
That's right.
So I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled.
And we should say, by the way, because I'm sure you're all thinking, and who's the handsome man sitting between these two folks, right? You'll be hearing a lot more about him, but this is our teacher for the day, Sensei Robert Chodo Campbell.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
Right. Does anyone down there know me? We can't see a thing, right?
No, I know. I mean, I saw a little bit, but now once the lights are on, it's all exciting.
Well, there's people waving in the backs. Presumably, they might be people you know, but...
Very intimidating.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
But think about it, though. What ceases is when you think that you're on Broadway.
It's not my first time on Broadway.
Really? More on that later, right? But we also have another guest, don't we?
We do. Joining us is a meditation and sound practitioner, Reverend Candace Simmons, who's extraordinarily talented, and she is gifting us with her instruments today, so we're really in for a treat. Aside from Sensei Chodo, we also have Reverend Candace with us, so very excited about that. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
These are Himalayan singing bowls, and they're wonderful in meditation practice to help you deepen your practice. And so I invite you not only to listen to the bowls, but to experience them. Feel free to close your eyes or soften your gaze as you release what occurred before you got here and what may happen afterwards, and allow yourself to be present to the experience today. Thank you.
Reverend Candace, thank you for that gift. That was absolutely magnificent. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Can we thank Reverend Candace? That was extraordinary.
I don't know about you, but I forgot that you all were in the room for a couple minutes there.
There is, I could literally read 4 or 5 pages of all that you've done, and I really am going to read one because you're extraordinary. Now, as many of you know, Buddhism is my core path. I've had the privilege of teaching Buddhist practice and philosophy in a small seminary for quite some time, and I've considered myself a practitioner for the past 15 years. To be able to interview you is an unbelievable honor and privilege for both of us. You truly are one of the most accomplished teachers in this country. And in the Zen tradition, sensei means teacher, and it is the designation of honor. But I know that many of the people who are your students affectionately refer to you simply as Chodo. So may I have that privilege?
Sure, please.
I appreciate that. Chodo. Chodo co-founded the New York Zen Center for Contemplative Care, an organization that delivers contemplative approaches to care through education, direct service, and meditation practice. Chodo is part of the core faculty of the Buddhist track in the Masters in Pastoral Care and Counseling at NYZCCC's education partner, New York Theological Seminary. He teaches in the University of Arizona's Medical School Center for Integrative Medicine's Integrative Medicine Fellowship and is a recognized Zodo Zen teacher with the American Zen Teachers Association, White Plum Sangha, and Soto Zen Buddhist Association. As a dynamic, earthy, and visionary leader and teacher, Chodo has traveled extensively in the United States, teaching in various institutions, as well as bearing witness to the suffering of HIV/AIDS in Zimbabwe and South Africa. His public programs have introduced thousands to the practices of mindful and compassionate care of the living and the dying. His passion lies in bereavement counseling and advocating for change in the way our healthcare institutions work with the dying. His practice has been featured in New York Times, PBS, Tricycle, Parabola, and other media outlets. And today we have the pleasure of welcoming Sensei Chodo to the United Palace's Open Heart Conversations. Thank you for being here, Sensei Chodo. I think the first time I heard about you was in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And I won't even get into how I heard about you because it would actually reveal a lot. And a lot about my own life and my own journey here. One of the things that I have loved the most when I've been in your presence is the fact that all of that is brought into the present moment. Mm. So Chodo, how did you come to be a Zen teacher?
I have no idea. I'm in the middle of the process now of writing a memoir, and Koshin, my husband, and I were just on retreat in Provincetown writing, and what came to mind was a particular story. We're looking for a title for this book, and what came to mind this week as I was writing about my earlier life was one day I went to I had the disprivilege of going to a very good boys' school in England. I'm from a single parent family on the wrong side of the track. Was considered a precocious, artistic 11-year-old, so I got a scholarship to this school, which was awful. because it was for kids from a much different background to mine. And anyway, one of the teachers one day in the front of the whole class, because I had failed once again at math, said, Campbell, you will achieve nothing in this life. You come from nothing, you are nothing, and you will achieve nothing. And so for approximately 45 years of my life, that was in my subconscious, that I was nothing. And the title of my book actually is probably going to be, In This Life You Will Achieve Nothing, because it's a great Zen teaching. That's the paradox right there. That's an incredible Zen teaching, that to achieve nothing is really, if there is such a thing as a goal in Zen, there it is. To come to that place where there's no expectations. So I came to become a Zen teacher, or as you said, I think all of my students refer to me as Chodo. I don't see myself as a teacher on some kind of pedestal. I just see myself as being in the world with those who I am fortunate enough to learn from. I think the teaching, student-teacher relationship has to be, for me, on an equal footing. I don't like to be up here, and we're learning from each other constantly.
But there was a moment of transformation, wasn't there?
There were many moments of transformation. I had a very lucrative career, two streams of lucrative career. One, in England, and when I came to New York, I was in the fashion industry as an art director, working with photographers, models, and artists. And I was also a cocaine addict, alcoholic. I came to the States when I was 30, and had this amazing career. And my boss at the time in London was paying me an exorbitant amount of money. I was doing a great job, and I was living in the high life. I was flying back and forth to London regularly, Concorde, whatever. And it was this kid from Birmingham, England, from, again, as I said, from this single mother, born on the wrong side of the tracks, and here I am in this world that...
So the kid who was supposed to achieve nothing and be nothing was now on the Concorde.
Was now on Concorde, and yeah, but if you look at that, when I look at that through the lens of my practice now, it's like, that too was nothing, because it had nothing to do with my reality.
Right.
My reality was this poor kid that had no idea, no concept of what it meant to make a lot of money, to behave appropriately, to take care of anyone else other than my own addictions. So here I was, this 30-year-old in New York with, in one moment I could be uptown in some fancy restaurant, being picked up by a limo, going to a client's dinner, and then I would leave that fancy restaurant club and be on Avenue A copping. So there was this whole, my life was, what the hell's going on here? And there were many stories, as most, anyone in this audience who knows if they're in 12-step recovery, we all have war stories. And there are many war stories that are not so important right now. But there was a moment when I woke up from yet another blackout, in my Armani tux, with my gold Cartier lighter and all the trappings of this amazing career that I had. And I woke up in the gutter on Bleecker and Thompson Street here in Manhattan. And there was that moment of divine intervention. I'm a Buddhist, and I see divine intervention. It was that time this was the word of God. It was like, Robert, it's time to give it up. It's done. And I crawled into my therapist's office and unpacked And I went to my first 12-step meeting, and that was 32 years ago now. And 5 years into my sobriety, spiritually bereft, I couldn't quite wrap my mind around the God aspect of the 12-step program, which is not to say that it didn't work for me in the beginning, but I needed something more. And I bumped into my first Buddhist teacher, who's my teacher today. She'll be 90 in November. And it's another long story, but to get to the very crux of it, I met her on the street and I said, I hear you're a teacher, and I just want you to know that I am very interested in finding a different path, and my name is Robert, and I'm 5 years sober, and I'm an incest survivor, and I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict, and I just don't know what to do with my life. And she said, Robert, you know what you need to do? I said, no. She said, shut up. Shut up and sit down. Can you hear where you're living? Your whole life is in this loop, and you think that's actually happening today. Shut up, get on a cushion, and meditate and see what happens. And that my first year of meditation was, I thought I would go insane, because all those stories that I'd been living out of were still running the show. Abuse, addiction, this, that. There was no room for who I really was inherently. In Buddhism, as you know, we talk about our true nature. Mm-hmm. My true nature was covered up with so much, I won't swear, so much garbage that I believed to be true, right? And sitting on my meditation cushion day after day after day, my commitment was to not get off the cushion each period of 30 minutes, no matter what thoughts came into my mind. And over time, I began to be able to relax into it, to see the stories, to notice my mind, to how my ego stepped in. All those little prods that, you will never be anything, you'll never amount to anything, you're nothing. And over time, I began to let that all just be there. Okay.
You never get rid of it.
I never get rid of it, and that to me is the blessing, because that keeps me in the present. When that voice comes in that you're a piece of doo-doo, I can snap back to the present moment. I'm like, you know what? That's not true. Here I am in this moment, making mistakes constantly, saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing. The Buddhist precepts, breaking the precepts constantly, but my awareness is right here in the forefront. So I make a faux pas. I apologize. I get into stinking thinking. I apologize to myself. Come on, Chodo. You know that's not true. That's so old. Where are you right now in this moment? In fear, in anxiety, in lust, in hunger. Take a breath. Oh, here I am. Yeah, I'm afraid, intimidated. As I said earlier, when I sit down, whoa, look at all those faces out there. I can't see you, but you can see me, right? There was a time when I didn't give a poop who was out there. Today I do. I want to know who's out there. I'm curious about you. I'm curious. It's like, and that's a big part of my life now, is curiosity. Whereas in the past it was like, I don't give a shit. I said it.
But what led to that leap? How is it that sitting in a cushion and simply seeing your story and seeing the pain and feeling all that's in you, how does it bring someone who was an incest survivor and a drug addict and an alcoholic and who is running after the great success and achieving it, how does it bring him to the place where he can look out and literally from a deep sense of curiosity want to know who these people are?
So in this moment, I'm intensely disliking you. And you know why.
Yes.
This is a very vulnerable spot for me to be. We talked about this a little bit earlier. I was joking, by the way.
I know.
You just made me intensely uncomfortable. It was very easy for me in my writing process, it's very easy to write about Robert or Chodo, the kid that did this, that did that had all these shenanigans going on in his life, that created all this havoc. But the most difficult thing was to be able to look at the people who were surrounding him during his recovery process. See, I'm speaking in the third person already. It was very difficult for me in my recovery to allow for those people who loved me around me to show me that, Chodo, you are worth it. What are you doing with yourself? It's okay. Trust, right? Trust that you are enough, and trust that we will not let you down, that we will be there for you. This was my community of maybe 5 or 6 people. That's as many as I could allow in at that time. And now we have this huge student body. To be able to, for me to be able to sit in the certain knowledge that there are people in my life that actually care about me is a huge, huge, well, first of all, it's very mysterious, but the gift, that's a huge gift for me. And it's a very, very difficult place. It's a very difficult place for me to sit in, because my whole life I didn't need you, you know. I just took care of myself. I survived. I didn't trust you. And that moment when one wakes up to, you know what, give it a shot.
Right. So in other words, sitting in the cushion gave you space from your story, but also space to see the love of the Sangha, the love of the community around you.
I had a life filled with people all around me, you know, from one party to the next, from one situation to the next. I mean, my life was filled with people. And I was just yesterday reflecting as I'm again writing this book, my constant companion in 1983 and 85 was my washer dryer. Right? I could go home at night after being out on the town all night with all these fancy friends, and the only thing that I could talk to was my washer dryer. For many reasons that will be in the book. So here I am surrounded, and my most important conversations were with this inanimate object. Sitting on the cushion, again, allowing for the possibility that there were folks in my life that I could have conversations with, and something would come back. Is this making any sense? I kind of drift off here and there once in a while. It's my pattern. I keep getting images as we're talking. When you were making the introduction, the work in Zimbabwe and South Africa. For some reason, are very present with me on this stage today. I'm not sure why.
Speak to it then.
So, let's see. In 1983, when I arrived in New York, I contracted HIV, and so I've been living with HIV now for 35 years now.
Yes.
And so back in those days, I became very active with Suicide Hotline and Gay Men's GMHC. And this was before I'd found my Buddhist path, so there was this kind of sense of imperviousness to life, and whatever happens will happen, and I kind of shrugged it off like I shrugged everything else off for a while. And then when I had the opportunity 7, 8, 9 years ago to be in Zimbabwe with in the squatter camps in South Africa and in Harare, where there's a huge pandemic of HIV. I realized in the time there what an incredible gift. You'll often hear in the rooms that of recovery what a gift my alcoholism was, because he brought me to this place. My sobriety brought me here. For me, the gift of HIV was bringing me to Zimbabwe, was bringing me to South Africa, and was bringing me to this place of total acceptance of the reality of my life. That moment by moment, anything could change. I have an incredible partner now for the last almost 20 years, and he can tell you that there are times if I get a cold, I think, is this it?
Right.
Right? I get a headache, is this it?
Right.
So there are moments that bring that back, it's like, boom, this is what you have. But for the most 99% of my life, it's just part of who I am, and it's not a threat or a worry. And yet, I know tomorrow, but that can be said of any of us. We're all here for the time that we're here, and there are no guarantees. And as you know, we were both around in the 80s. We both lost so many friends, so many people. And I think this, in part, is probably why I came to do the work that I do with the dying. Live as a man living with HIV. In the beginning, I felt I was living very, very close to death in a very surreal way, in a very different way to what I feel now. We're all living close to death. It's moment by moment by moment by moment. But this, I think, is in part what brought me to the work that I do in hospice and end of life, and the work that we do at our center. Because I think to do anything well, we have to be fully willing to go to the depths of whatever it is. And because of my own experience of my own health, I have no fear around being with people when they're dying. It's such an incredible gift for me to be in the profundity of this transition of someone's life, to be able to sit there. And as you know, when we're in relationship, when we're truly in relationship with another person, we know it. We know it just by being present to another person. They can be present with us. And there's something that's happening in that interplay there. So to be able to walk into a room and without wishing to sound grandiose in any way, to be totally fearless around the face of death is such an enormous gift for me. And that, I don't think that could have happened without my journey with HIV.
So HIV, in essence, brought you to a different relationship to death?
HIV gave me the courage, actually. Now remember, I was this kid that survived some very difficult situations as a child, and survived and was in recovery from alcohol and drug abuse. And it wasn't until I was sober that I found out that I contracted HIV. So from the very beginning, it was like, I will survive this. You know, I'm not going to take those drugs. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do the very best I can to live with this. And in a sense, I think that's where the fearlessness came from. You know, on the one hand, again, it's that paradox. I could die. Many of my friends are dying right now. I could die tomorrow or next week, or I could be here for the next 50 years. I don't know, but I'm going to fight this. I'm going to survive this. Everything I do, everything I can, I will do to survive this. Mm-hmm. And so I think that is where that transition, that shift occurred. And this is all in hindsight. You know, this wasn't in the moment, oh, well, you know, this is going to lead me to the work of being with dying. This is, who knows what's going to happen next week. So there was when that falls away, that when the uncertainty of life actually becomes a part of normal, it's like, yeah, life is uncertain. I don't know what's going to happen. To really be able to take that on.
That's deeply Zen, though, isn't it?
It's deeply Zen, is it? It's certainly part of the Zen teachings is that we don't know, moment by moment by moment. Mm-hmm. Each evening we have a chant, life and death are of supreme importance. We don't know if we're going to wake up tomorrow. Don't squander this life. Yes, not holding on to any idea that this is real. You know, this is my life, and it's going to go from A to Z, and I'm going from A to Z. This is what I will achieve, and this is my future, and this is how rosy it is, and I am going to be there. In 20 years from now, this is what I'll be doing. Again, I don't know what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. And from the Zen teachings, there's a great liberation there, not having to know. There are three tenets in Zen Buddhism. Not knowing is the first one, bearing witness and compassionate or loving action. And to be able to live in the not knowing is where it's at. It's easier said than done, you know, because who wants to not know? Not me, I want to know. But the reality is we don't know.
Right.
So it's living in acceptance. For me, that's what softened the idea of I have to be in not knowing. It's like the acceptance of the reality that I don't know what's going to happen when I leave here. I could get hit by a truck.
Any second.
Any second. I mean, you know,
everything changes.
Every moment. You know, in our lives, people disappear. They're here 1 minute, and then the next thing we know, they've died. Or they've been hit by it, whatever it is. So we don't know.
I've experienced that twice in my life. 4 years ago, I had a heart attack. And literally only a few months ago, had another heart situation. Twice doctors look me in the face and say, you could have died. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, with each passing experience, there is this deeper and deeper desire a deeper and deeper awareness that every moment, this moment is an absolute gift. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be anything except absolute. You know, there's times when I just want to like scream. I just want to be absolutely authentic in this moment. Mm-hmm. I don't want to waste any moment on nonsense. Mm-hmm. Because and the reality is that is true of every single person, every single thing. You know, this glass's brokenness is already in the glass, right?
And isn't it insane that for so many of us, we have to come to that edge where we could have almost died, we could have been killed, before we realize that this is it. I want to live my life.
Right.
You know, why do we have to wait for those moments when it's right in front of us? About 10 years ago, I had an accident. I fell off. Well, I was on top of a step ladder, and it gave away. It fell apart beneath me, and I hit my head on the corner of a table, and fell on my face. And we were actually teaching that day on. We do a lot of teaching around end of life, and that day's class was actually around death and dying, and how it could happen in any moment. And during the lunch break, I was on the stepladder reaching for a vase. It gave out, hit my head. I ended up with 32 stitches, an orbital fracture. But in that moment, laying on the ground with the blood pouring out of my face, it was like, oh my God, this is it, right?
Right.
This is it. And the EMS came, and we were in the ambulance. And I'm just giving a plug now for my practice. We're in the ambulance, and the EMS guy's like, "Are you okay? Are you in shock?" I'm like, "No." He said, "You are so calm. What's going on here?" I said, "Well, this is actually years of practice of meditation, and I'm fully in not knowing right now." We were on the way to Bellevue, the trauma hospital, and it was, for me, wow, this Zen stuff actually works, this meditation stuff, because had it not been for my practice, I don't know where I would have been, but I was actually lying in this ambulance as they were doing all this stuff and making sure I wasn't going to go into shock, that I wasn't going to die. To be able to be fully present to what was happening in that moment. And in Bellevue Hospital thinking, I could have died. And I got a lot of work to do. There's a great story about Ram Dass. Do you know the story of Ram Dass? The great teacher who had a stroke about 20 years ago. And he's done a lot of work. He's written many books and talking about end of life and fearlessness. And there's a story of when he had his stroke, and he is on the gurney being wheeled into the ER, and he looked up at the ceiling and he was like, oh shit. He was so afraid that he was going to die after all these years of practice. And he said, I have got some work to do.
That's right. That's exactly.
I still have some work to do.
Yep.
Well, with that said, for those of us who aren't Buddhist practitioners, I know myself, I get caught up very quickly. I have one foot, I think like many of us, in the past, and one foot in tomorrow. So I completely lose sight of where I am at this very moment. And I think a lot of people live that way. So without having, what do you recommend for the person who has not had that oh poop moment and doesn't necessarily want to wait until they're faced with their own mortality to be able to get into that space? And I know you might say meditation, but for some people meditation is so difficult. How do we do it? How do we get there? Or how do we begin?
Well, let me just say that you're all going to have that oh poop moment. Each and every one of you in this room is going to die. And hopefully, you'll all have a moment when it's like, wow, this is it. Right? And not, why didn't I? Oh my God, I should have. I can't tell you how many times being with someone who's dying and they say, if only I had done this, if only I had been kinder to my kids, if only I had retired earlier. So to answer the question, you're all going to have that poop moment. So if you could just allow yourself to wake up to that fact. In Zen, we talk all the time about, wake up. You are going to die. So do you want to wait for that poop moment? Or do you want to live your life in awareness of that? It's like, how can I do the best I can? How can I be the best I can be today? How can I serve others? How can I serve myself in a way that's beneficial not only to me but to others? How can I step outside of this idea that I am impervious to death, that I am not going to die today, I've got a week ahead of me, I've got a vacation to plan. It's not true. We don't know that we're going to be on vacation next week. What we do know is in this moment, I have an opportunity to wake up, to fully realize who I am in this moment, and to fully realize that I can be of service to others, not just to me. And of course, being of service to others is being of service to me. We know that, right? So don't wait for that poop moment, because that's going to happen anyway.
And there's something very interesting that you said. In working with the dying, what is the regret that you hear the most?
I should have retired earlier. Is one of no, really. That's one of the. I can't believe I worked so hard and I didn't play enough. One of the most poignant, I think, is I wish I had loved more. I wish I had been able to love more. I wish I'd been able to love my children more. Whether that means spending more time with them or seeing them for who they are. For seeing them for who they were. Those are the two that really come to mind for me. It's like, if only I had given myself more time, more opportunity to be in the world, not stuck behind my desk or my computer, and to have loved more deeply. Yeah.
Incredible. You've all been warned. Really, this is invaluable, invaluable information, because we do get caught up in the daily trappings and we lose sight of really what's most important. And this is such an extraordinary reminder.
What's important is the moment that's right in front of you. There's nothing else. Everything else is a construct, it's an idea. I'm going to go home this evening with my partner. We have 2 25-pound Maine Coon cats. We're going to snuggle, watch Netflix. We're going to order food, That's a thought. That's an idea of what's going to happen for my life for the next 10 hours. I don't know if that's really going to happen. I don't know if that's true.
Chodo, what was it in Buddhism that you found that that you've continued to walk that path?
Well, I think it's as I've been, it's the reality that this moment is all that we have. This is it. Now, this is in my experience of Buddhism, of Zen Buddhism, that the reality is that this is it. You know, what drew me to Buddhism in the early on, and of course is still a huge part of my practice, is the non-exclusivity clause. The teachings are that we allow everything to unfold, to allow everything in. It's not about Buddhism is the path and there's no other path. You know, you're over there, you've got your thing, but Buddhism is the only way to be. And the thing I love about my Zen practice is that I'm not caught, I'm not stuck in one place. It's not rigid. I can move because we're changing moment by moment by moment by moment. There's no fixed anything. Again, so with my work with people at the end of life, there's a story of one patient I would see regularly. At the moment I walked in, I'm dressed like this, without my robe here, and she said, "Good morning, Father, how are you?" It's this big Irish face of mine, and I'm all in black, and I have a little white shirt, my formal shirt, and I said, "Actually, I have to tell you, I'm not a father. I'm a Zen Buddhist." And she said, "God sent you. You're a father." I was like, "Okay.
Love her.
All right. Yeah. Father Robert, here I am. I do happen to be, I have Irish heritage, so I'll be your father." So I would visit with her every week, and, she was a wonderful, 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 wonderful teacher of mine, ultimately a wonderful teacher of mine. And so for her, I was this Catholic priest. That's who was stepping into the room to be with her, to actually listen to her stories, to listen to her heartaches, to listen to her fears around dying. I was her Catholic priest. I was Father Robert. In the next room, one day, I walked in and I said, "Hi, I'm the chaplain on the floor today." And the guy said, "Get out of here. I don't want anybody religious in here. No, get out. Do you believe in God?" I said, "No." "All right, come and sit down." So what I'm trying to illustrate here is I'll call her Maria. She was Italian. For Maria, absolutely I believed in God. Because how could I not? Because if I'm in the room and this patient that I'm with, this person that I'm with, is devout Catholic, how could the presence of God not be in that room in that moment? How could the presence of God not be there? So how could I not believe it if I am not stuck in one rigid idea that there is only this one way of being in the world, a Zen Buddhist monk? No, I have to be able to move to Father Robert. And in the next room to, I don't believe in God. And in the next room, Zen is all bullshit. I said it again. So no fixed identity is one of the major teachings for me around Buddhism that keeps me on the path, that I'm not stuck in some idea of who I am, or who you are, or who you are, or who you are.
You're all fair ways.
You're all things. I can bump into some guy on the street who's a real asshole. Right? I said it again. I swore. This is what happens when you put me on stage for too long. So, I walk bump into the street, and it's a real asshole. And the next morning I'll see him, and he may say, "You know what, sir, I'm really sorry I bumped into you yesterday." And I'm like, "You know what, me too. What's your name? Where were you coming from? Where were you going?" And in that moment, there's an opportunity for two people to have a relationship, to meet. Or I could just say, "I'm not going to talk to him. I'm not listening to his apologies." No. In this moment, that's gone. That moment of demonizing, of denigrating, that was yesterday. How about right now? Gone. Yeah.
One of the most interesting things that I have found over the years is when I speak to people who are really devoutly religious, whether they're Jews or Christians or Muslims, and they say, "Oh, Buddhism has made me a better Jew." And I said, "What?" At the time, it didn't make any sense to me. I said, "What does that mean?" Because number one, I was under the impression, I think like many people still are, that Buddhism is a religion. Can you speak to that?
Well, some would say that Buddhism actually is a religion. For most people, it's a philosophy. I can't say for most people, but it's also greatly seen as a philosophy, a way of living with intention. As I said earlier, also of being of service in the world, of being of service to each other. And a lot of the teachings really mesh beautifully with the world's traditions, with the world's faith traditions, because it's about being good. It's about selflessness. I think 80% of Buddhists in New York are Jewish. They're called Jubus.
Yeah.
Right?
Jubus are a big thing in New York City.
Jubus are a big thing in New York City.
In the country, by the way.
In the country.
1/3 of Buddhists in America come from the Jewish community.
Right. My husband, a famous, beautiful Zen teacher, Jewish. Right? Me, Irish, Protestant, whatever. So it's not, it's not this fixed identity. It's like, what can I take from these Buddhist teachings that fit my life? We have a really good friend, Rabbi Amichai Laulavi, who actually married my partner and I. This rabbi marrying 2 Buddhist monks. Because he's like, why not? Mm-hmm. It's about love. This union is about 2 people wanting to be married to each other. It's not about the rabbi and the Zen monk, and it's not about Judaism, and it's not about Buddhism. It's about love. Right?
Right.
That's, at the end of the day, for me, what it's about. And so many of our students, we've actually had a couple of Catholic nuns that have gone through our trainings for end-of-life care, and they felt that the Buddhist teachings just enhanced their own understanding of their religion of origin, their faith-based.
How beautiful. How beautiful that is.
Yeah.
And would you call that the middle way?
Yes, the middle way is if I can be not stuck in one identity. Yes, I'm a practicing Buddhist. And again, back to the hospital visits, can I also allow for your faith and your faith and your faith to be a part of my life? Absolutely. How boring would it be to just be like, no, there's nothing else. Well, you've got your shtick, that's fine, No, again, that word curious. Buddhism for me, I think, is about being curious, open to, there's a famous Zen teaching where part of the teaching is to be open to the 10,000 things. That is, to everything that life has to offer, be open to it. The different religions, the hurt, the sorrows, the love, the joy, the pain. Some of it we don't welcome, we just get it, but to be open to it, to not push anything away.
Then how do you deal with injustice?
How do we deal with injustice? This comes up all the time. Particularly in our current political situation, the culture that we're living in right now, the environment that we're living in right now, often our students will say, I can't believe, this person is living in this place and we're in this country, and what are you doing about it? When I see injustice, I have to first of all, understand who I am in the world and what I'm capable of doing. Mm-hmm. Also in the picture comes this acceptance. This is what's happening in the world right now. We are all responsible. Whether we like it or not, we have in some way colluded to create the causes and conditions that are in effect right now. Mm-hmm. Whether it's our complacency to not go and vote, So I just gave it away. Whether, and this has been happening over the centuries, it's like just allowing things to unfold. Oh, and that's not my problem, We've seen it over and over, and it's happening now. With the refugee situation we have, with the global situations that are going on, injustice on crack. It's like unbelievable what's happening. You just have to open the newspaper, turn on the TV. What I can do is I can join a group of activists. I can sign petitions. Do I think me as a single person is going to change the world? No. But do I think 100 million of me could change the world? Yeah, why not? We have to be able to look at the injustice and not back away from it. Oh, I can't do anything about it. No, we absolutely have to step into that pool of injustice and say, no, I stand up for my rights. I stand up for their rights.
From a Zen perspective, my perspective has also been that as a Buddhist, I allow it in. I see it and allow it in. And beyond that, I will not otherize it. What I see is a part of who I am. I find it in myself. Whether my individual or collective consciousness, this is my own shadow. And recognizing it, I think, is part of the work as well. As a Buddhist, I think that's exceedingly important.
I think it's exceedingly important to not see it as a Buddhist, but to see it as who you are.
Yes.
Right? So being a Buddhist has nothing to do with it.
Yes.
Being, again, awake has everything to do with it. So whether I'm a Buddhist or a Catholic or an atheist or a Jew, I have to see what is happening in the world. And I don't want to say because I'm a Buddhist I'm more awake because I do all this meditation. No. It's because I am in the world who I am.
Indeed.
Yeah. You're quiet over there, Arda.
I'm just mesmerized. I don't know about you, but I'm mesmerized.
Are you enjoying this?
Would you like to ask some questions,
Absolutely.
Sensei Chodo?
Is there anyone out there who wants to ask any question? Come on, be part of the conversation.
Now is the time. If there's any question you ever wanted to ask, don't hold back.
Raise your
Got
hand.
them right now.
Yeah, as for holding back,
A lady in the back of the room.
The lady, someone in the back?
Yes.
Yubi?
Do we have Yubi here?
This is our beloved Yubi who will assist us.
You
And
can
please
come
stand up.
closer. We don't bite.
Oh, there it goes. Fantastic.
I was wondering if you are familiar with the work of Byron Katie.
of course, yes. Yes.
So how does that interact with Buddhist philosophy?
I have no idea. What's your name?
Helen.
Helen? Come here, I can't see you. Okay, so I guess that you are inspired by the work of Byron Katie?
Yes.
So tell me something that resonates with you from the work or the words of Byron Katie, and let's see if I can take it from there.
Well, one thing is about people's true nature, because she says the exact same thing. And her whole philosophy is very based on perception, okay? And the idea that the individual is not unique, similar to Buddhism. And her husband, I don't know if you're familiar with her husband, Stephen Mitchell, is a well-known Buddhist. So they recently wrote a book together called A Mind at Home with Itself. So he analyzes a famous Buddhist passage. I think it's called the Diamond Sutra, and then she analyzes it. So there are some similarities and differences. I was just reading a book called Why Buddhism is True. And I was up to the chapter on the non-self. And that kind of goes along with Byron Katie, too. So I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit more on that concept, because I use it.
It's funny.
The concept of the non-self.
I think, because you are raising something even infinitely deeper, which is the extent to which many of these Eastern ideas, deep spiritual intuitions of Buddhism, the Hindu faith, have become much more accepted in the West. As our friend basically indicates, we're now seeing a lot of writers and American intellectuals begin to discover not merely the practices, but even the very ideas. For example, in the psychoanalytic tradition, there's now a deep interest in the idea of no self. All right. So, what do you have to say about how Buddhist ideas are becoming much more prevalent in our society?
And tell us why you're giggling about it.
Right.
Well, there's a very well-known teaching in Zen from a fascicle, a teaching from Dogen, and he says, to study the self is to forget the self. I'm sorry. To study the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to allow the 10,000 things to appear, as the 10,000 things I talked about earlier. So when we can step out of our own way, when we can allow for the possibility of anything to arise, when we can drop all our stories, you're talking about psychoanalytic and psychotherapeutic communities, the idea that we come into this world and we have this, Helen, this perfect truth, we're perfect and complete just as we are. We come into this world, our true nature is there, right? We're little babies, we're perfectly innocent, and as we grow through our conditioning, all this poo-poo, caca, shit is piled on us, right? This is our conditioning, and we tend to forget that actually that's not who we are. Right? For this is who for 40, 45 years I thought I was, nothing. Zilch, you will amount to nothing. When I can allow the possibility that self doesn't exist, that's a little tiny self, this little tiny hurt creature, this little child, this little adult that just got pooped on all over the place. When I can go beyond that, to forget that, to be the big self, the mind, nature, everything, the universe. That, for me, is when we're talking about self, no self. It's not that I disappear. This no self is not something that's just disappearing and I no longer exist. I'm just not caught up in some idea of an identity. It's just, again, it's like this, not getting stuck in anything. Yeah, just pure essence. I wish I were there, but I'm not. I could talk about it.
You're getting close.
Getting close.
Any other questions? We do want you to be a part of this. Right here.
There's one here and one here.
We
have one here.
Oh, and one over there. Okay.
Excellent. And you'll be right next, okay?
Hello, thank you very much. It's fascinating, and my best friend invited me to this event. I'm very happy to be here. My question is that as you live in the now, a lot of patience goes with that. even if you are doing something that you love, it takes time. So are there any kind of tools that you use to be patient with yourself as you are being in the now?
What's your name?
My name is Wanda.
Wanda. So I'm one of the most impatient people you'll ever meet. And one of my default emotion is anger. So I live very close. So the two emotions that live, or the two facets of who I am that live very close to the surface, are anger and impatience. And they're constantly arising, as well as love and joy and sympathy and resentment. So all I can do is recognize, hopefully in time to not cause harm, that this is where I am right now. I can be in Starbucks, and if my double espresso is not here within 30 seconds, I'm going to bite your head off, right? Because I want it now. So there's my impatience with the barista who's just doing a job, and then my anger arises. And in that moment, I have to take a breath. Noticing my impatience, noticing my anger, and what is it doing? It's just making turmoil in me. I mean, how many times have I said to the barista or the person or whatever, you know what, I'm not coming back here anymore. And they're like, whatever, honey. You know, you go have your shitty day. I'm just here doing my job. You know? So when I can look at my conditioning, whatever my conditioning is about, I'm not getting it when I deserve. I want it right now. And I look at that, and usually underneath that, there's fear. Right? Usually under the anger, there's fear. Under the impatience, there's something else. It's never about what's happening in this moment. It's always a story. So being in the now is being without that story. But it takes a while to get there. Yes. You had somebody here, and then there was a lady here, a person here. Thank you, Wanda.
I'm Sandy, and I've struggled with the concept of nirvana, and it being this letting go of total acceptance. And it's hard for me to let go of huge joy. And if you're going to have huge joy, then comes huge sorrow. But in the middle, we're taught that if you let go, there's something even better. But I'm not there yet with the something even better. I'm a national disaster relief chaplain, and we're taught that when we're dealing with Buddhists, that they're in total acceptance in a disaster, and that, you know, so we're taught to treat each religious group differently. So, you know, this total acceptance of it, I think you get the point that I'm confused and seeking and yearning.
So give up this idea of letting go, because what is there to let go of? You know, this is a huge, for me, a big stumbling block for I think, from my own experience and my own understanding, that when I hear people say, I just can't let go of it, I'm like, I'll take it. Give it to me. Give me your anger. Well, what do you mean? Give it to me, I'll take it. But there's nothing to give you, it's inside of me. Exactly. This letting go is such a setup, Right? I've tried, and I can't let go. It's something wrong with me. If only I was trying harder. It doesn't work. Nirvana is right here, right now. This is nirvana. This is the hell realm. This is the heavenly realm. This is nirvana, the pure land, the heavenly realm. There are teachings, some teachers said that this is nirvana. This is it. Right here, right now, this is what we got. And in the next minute, hell. Again, moment by moment by moment, no fixed ideas. And I love this idea of Buddhists being in total acceptance of everything. I've seen some really angry Buddhists. You see them at the peace marches, banging each other with their style. Get out of my way, I got an important, my protest is much more important than yours. Banging each other with their peace signs, It's like, I gotta get to the front, I want to get to the microphone. Again, we have to be careful not to buy into the hype. It's dangerous because we're human. First of all, the first thing we are is human, and we're all conditioned, and we all have our failings, and let's not get caught up in too much about letting go and that's heaven, this is hell, this is hell, this is heaven. It's like,
thank you. I would love to continue, but I'd love the opportunity for all of us to experience a meditation with Sensei Chodo.
I want this lady to...
You do? Okay, yeah. Very quickly now.
Thank you so much. I'm feeling so very blessed to be here, as I'm sure everyone is. My name is Joni Klar. I'm with the Poem Foundation, and we're putting together the first World Dignity Forum this next year in India. And people here will be working with us on this as we create a platform for sustainable solutions and people with dignity, and shining the light on them. So, of course, you're invited. But I would also like to hear what your thoughts are on the role of dignity in our lives.
The role of dignity in our lives.
Why would you want to live any other way than not in dignity? I think the role of dignity, I don't even know that dignity is a role. I'm not sure what that even means. I think we have to be in dignity. We have to be in authenticity. We have to be in integrity. We have to be in dignity. And of course, it's not easy. But all these are ways of being in the world. And I think, when we attach a role to it, then we're setting ourselves up again for a failure. Because I'm going to, I can't put dignity on and take it off. I'm either in dignity or I'm not. I'm either in authenticity or I'm not. So how do I see my life, my practice, as being those things, as being dignity? Can I be dignity? Yeah, for the most part, I can.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting. I will chime in because this plays a very, 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 very big role in my own life. And part of it is because I'm not merely someone who's a Buddhist, I'm Puerto Rican. And in my culture, dignity is exceedingly important. And I've tried to reconcile what that means within a Buddhist context. And I've come to the realization that it's a paradox. Dignity is truly who we are, in the sense of being that Buddha nature, being that wholeness. So in a sense, part of dignity, and this is the paradox, is that I am infinitely more than the stories I tell myself. Infinitely more. Mm-hmm. And so are you. And on the other hand, those stories, abusive child, alcoholic, drug addict, they are the source, ironically, for many of us, of our compassion. The things we hide, the things we're ashamed of, are often the path to our full humanity. And so it's this remarkable paradox that I think sits at the core of our dignity, that our stories, particularly those we hide, give us our strength if we allow them to. And on the other, we are so much more than any one of our stories.
Yeah. This will take 1 minute. I'm sorry, Reverend Candace. Koshin and I used to lead meditation at Sing Sing prison. And Sing Sing prison, you don't get there for shoplifting. So these were very, very hardcore criminals. And to sit with those men who had committed pretty awful crimes each Sunday, and to sit with those men who were some of the most dignified people I've ever seen. Because they were not only taking responsibility for the acts that they had committed, they were taking responsibility for the rest of their lives. And they were taking responsibility, and this is like, they were taking responsibility for the moment they were in, moment by moment by moment. This rapist, this murderer. Sitting there on the cushion. Yeah, that for me was dignity. To be saying, yes, I did that. Yes, this is what I'm capable of. And I atone. Sorry.
Chodo, I do want us to do a meditation with you, and Reverend Candace will be joining us, and before she comes on stage, or as she's coming on stage, your husband is a brilliant and gifted teacher in and of himself, and I really would love it if you could introduce us to him for just a few minutes, if you could just, where is he in the audience, and maybe say a few words?
About him?
Yeah.
So, Koshin, I'm going to kill the two of you. I'm going to drop my Buddhist precepts and kill you both. This is a collusion that you both had earlier on. Koshin is sitting in the front of the audience. He is my husband. We've been together for 17 years. And as you said, he's an incredible teacher in the Zen tradition. We have very, very different approaches to our Buddhist practice, and very, very similar approaches, but we have different understandings of the Zen teachings, which is perfect, because that's what relationships are about, differences and samenesses. Had it not been for Koshin, I wouldn't be sitting here today. He has been a mirror for me. And when I spin out of control, wander, when I get impatient, or when I get resentful or angry, it's like, who's in the room right now? Who are you? And I'm like, get out of my way. And it's like, all right then. Can Chodo come back into the room? He teaches me on a daily basis what it means to be in my body, in this moment. Sometimes it's pretty, sometimes it's not. And that's who he is. He's my Buddha.
Sensei Koshin, would you like to stand up so that everybody sees you? And please welcome Sensei Koshin.
Turn around, let's see you.
And I know that folks that are here may have an enormous amount of questions about the extraordinary ministry that you and your husband lead. For those of you who are interested, at the end there's material right alongside the front of the stage. Please feel free to come and pick it up. And I really do urge you, if you have a deep interest, please visit. Your Zendo is simply fantastic and welcoming. Beautiful community. And so I hand it now to you, dear teacher.
So take a moment. So you're going to take a moment.
Mike, all of our mics are cut.
So you're going to take a moment to just notice how you feel in your body right now. Feel the weight of your body pushing down into the chair, and feel the chair supporting you. Notice that slight difference in consciousness when you're in one moment feeling the weight of your body in the chair, and then that shifts when you feel the chair supporting you. Notice any sounds in the room. Notice what happens in your body when you hear that sound. Notice what happens to your breath. Notice your body as the sounds enter into your body. This is actually a wonderful opportunity if you have aches, pains, any tension in the body, to allow the sound to reach that spot. Which sound resonates with your particular pain? Notice as the breath enters your body, as your lungs expand, the rib cage rises, opens slightly to allow the expansion of the lungs. Allow the sounds to wrap around this heart space. imagine simply being the sound, not this self, this person listening, but simply being present, being the sound without any labels or ideas. Take a moment to see if on your next inhalation and exhalation you can drop any ideas. Allowing yourself to come back into the room, into your body, noticing any change in your breathing, allowing, simply allowing. Let me respectfully remind you Life and death are of supreme importance. Time swiftly passes by and opportunity is lost. On this day, the days of our life are decreased by one. Each of us should strive to awaken. Awaken. Take heed. Do not squander your life.
Dear brothers and sisters, help me to thank Sensei Chodo for his teaching today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And brothers and sisters, help me to thank also Reverend Candace for her gifts. Sister Arda, love you.
And I you.
And I you.
Thank you all so very much. Have a beautiful evening.